What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 168 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about a book that is not from the Wildstorm universe. This is The Martian Manhunter, Volume 1, The Epiphany. This is the first 6 issues of an ongoing series that came out a couple years ago. This is by Rob Williams and Eddie Barrows, and this is the story of John Jones, the Martian Manhunter. He is a superhero, he is a member of the Justice League, and he is divided. He has two separate loyalties that are conflicting with each other. He doesn't know if he wants to be a son of Earth or a son of Mars, and I can't get much more into this book without getting into some pretty huge spoilers that don't even come out in this book until over halfway in. So I am going to be spoiling some stuff so that I can talk about this book a little bit. So if you don't want some pretty big spoilers, go ahead and turn this video off right now. Okay, so this book is not bad, but it's also not really what I expected, and so that kind of affected my enjoyment of it a little bit. So basically, this completely changes everything that you ever knew about the Martian Manhunter, which, since this is in a reboot, technically it's okay for it to do that. Now, personally, I preferred a lot of the Martian Manhunter's history from before the DC reboot, so this isn't really working for me just on that level alone, but because this is part of a rebooted DC universe, I don't have a problem with them changing everything, but just aesthetically and objectively for me, I prefer the stuff that came before the DC New 52. So here we find out that there is only one planet in the Milky Way galaxy that can support life, and it has to either be Earth or Mars. And Mars was a living, thriving planet a long, long time ago, and then for whatever reason, life started on Earth, and so that meant that life on Mars had to die. And so the Martians on Mars, they put together this secret weapon that they were going to send to Earth, and this secret weapon was somehow going to get Earth ready to be sacrificed. All life on Earth was going to be sacrificed so that life on Mars could get started once again. There's a lot of maybes and ifs going on here that aren't answered in this volume. For example, how long has the Martian Manhunter been on Earth? Because we are told that only one planet can support life, and if Earth has had life for 6,000 to millions of years, we don't really know how long life has been on Earth, at least in the context of this story, and for that matter, scientists don't even agree on how long there's been life on Earth. We don't know how long, so how long has the Martian Manhunter been doing this on Earth? How long has he been failing about not completing his mission that they sent him to do? So we don't really know how long he's been on Earth. We don't really know what ended life on Mars. We are told that there can only be one planet that can support life, but we don't know what destroyed life on Mars and what started life on Earth. And I imagine those are things that are going to be answered in Volume 2, and that is another thing I will go ahead and talk about real quick. This is not a complete story. This really is one half of a much larger story. This is only a 12-issue series. It didn't last any longer than that. It was collected in 2 separate volumes. So if you are going to pay retail price for this book and you're expecting one solid, complete story, you are going to be disappointed, because this volume, it ends just when things are really getting started. It takes a while to get things kicked into high gear. Actually, I won't even say that, because things really begin very close to page 1. Things just start almost right out the gate, but things percolate and take a little while to develop, if that makes any sense. And so by the end of this volume, things are still kicking and things are still going, and you don't get a complete story with this volume. So if that's a deal breaker for you, you are definitely going to be disappointed with this book. I mentioned earlier that this book changes a lot of things about the Martian Manhunter's backstory. It also changes a lot of things about how his powers work. For example, and this is some of the spoilers that I mentioned that don't even come about in this book until around issue 3 or so, we find out that the Martian Manhunter, he basically commits suicide trying to scatter himself across the planet so that the Martians cannot find him and use him to end all life on Earth. So he splits himself into several different beings. There is a jewel thief in Dubai. There is an FBI agent somewhere in America. There is an alien who is called Mr. Biscuits, and we don't know why, but we are just told that the Martian Manhunter messed up when he was splitting himself into all these different characters, and Mr. Biscuits looks an awful lot like John. He's just wearing a suit and tie, and he carries a cane and a fedora. We don't really know why he messed up in creating this persona that is an aspect of him. And then there's another one called the mold, who is his intellect. And all of these guys have been scattered across the planet, and basically the Martians, they want to gather all of them and then sacrifice them so that they can restart life on Mars. And if you don't like that, if you think that's a little weird and out there, then you're not going to like this book. Now, me personally, I prefer the Martian Manhunter to be a tad bit more reined in. I liked it whenever he was a shapeshifter with telepathy, and then he could become different people, but he couldn't necessarily split himself off and become multiple people simultaneously. And this book kind of cheats a little bit in giving us these extra characters who are all the Martian Manhunter, because we're seeing at least two of these characters before we see the Martian Manhunter commit suicide and jump into this Atom Smasher thing. So it cheats a little bit because it shows us these characters, and then it says, just kidding, these two are actually aspects of the Martian Manhunter, and you're thinking, that's not right. We saw them before we saw the Martian Manhunter die, so that's a little weird. Overall, if you don't know anything about the Martian Manhunter, if you are not familiar with any of his previous iterations, you might really like this book. Then again, you might not, because this is not a complete story. This is one half of a story, and in my opinion, if they wanted to put out a complete story, they could have just put all 12 issues in one much more expensive volume. Don't put half of a complete story in a trade paperback like this. That's just my opinion. I think people still would have bought it if it was worth buying. Overall, I think that this is okay. I think that my preconceptions about the Martian Manhunter kind of prevented me from enjoying this as much as I would have liked, and that's weird to say because the Martian Manhunter is not a character who has a lot of backstory that a lot of people know. I think most of what everyone knows about the Martian Manhunter comes from his time in the Justice League, either in the comics or in the TV show. A lot of people don't know that much about him as a solo character, so this book really could have done anything it wanted in reconstructing the Martian Manhunter and trying to make him work as a solo character, not tied to the Justice League or Stormwatch or whatever. And I don't think that this book necessarily did a very good job of that. This seems like it was intended from issue 1 to be a limited story about John having to make a choice, and not an ongoing series that is trying to rebuild him as a capable solo character who doesn't have to be part of the Justice League. So overall, I think that this is just kind of middle of the road. It's not bad. I think that it's very technically well done. It's just not necessarily for me. I think there's several different factors here that prevented me from enjoying this as much as I think other people probably would have. So those are my thoughts on this book. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with another video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.